Welcome to part 3 of the 308 pre-charged pneumatic airgun build. In this short episode, I work on the breech screws and some of the caulking issues. Tight spots had developed when caulking the action due to the breech screws bending. I only had one picture taken of the build in 2018. I cannot remember the reason for the photo. I obviously didn't spend any amount of time on anything significant, otherwise I would have taken more pictures. My biggest dilemma was that the caulking had worked, but after a few dry fires the action was very tight. The culprit was the breech screws that limit the travel of the breech within the inner tube that houses the action, hammer, and the spring. You can see in the picture the screws had bent. The screws also scratched the inside of the main tube. The slot the screws traveled in were not long enough and caused the screws to bottom out against the slot when fired. So I became pretty good at machining the screws for the breech travel limit. This time I made the screws from drill rod. After assembling the rifle and firing it a few times, the action was stuck again. A screw had shattered, likely due to not spending enough time tempering the screws. The grain structure was very fine, but I think the duration of tempering wasn't long enough or hot enough to really draw back the brittleness of the metal. While I had the rifle apart again, I decided to lathe down the breech tube that holds all the internal parts, only leaving a few areas to be guided in the main tube. The tube just barely fits in my 7x14 mini lathe. I then made another screw to replace the cracked one, lathe the end, tap the thread, mill the head, slot for a screwdriver, and heat treat. Oh yeah, and don't forget tempering. Note the caulking arm that was 3D printed from PLA carbon fiber. It worked until cracks formed in one end around the pivot holes. The part requires a redesign to strengthen the pivoting areas. A friend had wanted me to try the carbon fiber filament to determine what kind of strength it really had in a practical application. On the breech tube, I lengthened the slots due to the screws striking the slot at the furthest travel. That was the direct cause of bending and breaking the screws. The slots were limiting the valve from fully opening, and that shouldn't be the case. With the airgun assembled once again, I dry fired it a few times under air pressure. It is very hard to see the breech travel distance. I wondered if the iPhone slow-mo feature would capture the movement. The slow motion did capture the distance the valve opens. I could then better gauge that the screws would no longer interfere with the slots. Having better understood the purpose of the screws and the slot lengths, I was able to solve the issues with caulking the rifle action. There is still something catching or causing some effort to caulk the rifle. I also tried nylon as a caulking arm as it is tough, light material. So far the nylon has proven to work, but it is bulky. Getting the airgun this far has been a real challenge. In the next video I will showcase the efforts of 2020. This will be a much longer video as I spent a fair amount of time getting the rifle to the point where I could take it out safely and test fire in the field. If you want a preview of how far the rifle project went in 2020, visit the airgundevelopment.com website. I really appreciate all those who have subscribed and would love to hear your thoughts on the project in the comments below. Thanks for watching.